I'm Naimh O'Connor and I am a third year genetics student in UCD, and I just wanted to say a couple of words before I give you over to our wonderful Women in STEM panel this afternoon. I firstly want to say a huge thank you to my parents for organising this event for 7 years now. It has been absolutely amazing getting to know so many amazing women who are, well, I've known them since I was 13, some of them, and it is not lost on me that it's such a rare opportunity to get to listen to some of the most well-respected women in the country talk about how important it is to build each other up and encourage both professional and personal success. So thank you to them and to everyone who's come here for giving me that opportunity. And I also want to thank Anne O'Leary and Vodafone Ireland for not only sponsoring this event, but for spearheading the panel as well that we have today, because it is certainly very close to my heart, and Anne is going to be participating in a couple of minutes. So I just want to say a couple of words about attracting women to STEM and all that sort of stuff. So it's sort of attracting women to STEM, and then once they get there, trying to encourage them to climb the professional ladder has been a very hard fought battle for many years. But we are getting there, and we're a hell of a lot further along than we used to be. Today there are so many notable women in STEM, both in their professional successes and in their activism. So, for example, Katie Bowman was recently the first person to ever generate an image of a black hole. And Greta Thunberg is only 16 years old, and she is a world-renowned climate activist and is nominated for a Nobel Prize this year as well. And there are so many more amazing women like those two who are doing just as incredible things. But this hasn't always been the case, and it really can't possibly have been the case, because out of all Nobel Prize awardees of all time, 853 are men and 51 are women, and 20 of those women have won in STEM areas of physics, chemistry and physiology or medicine. So that's quite a difference between the two. And in 1962, the Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded to James Watson, Francis Crick and Maurice Wilkins for the discovery of the double helix structure of DNA. So because I'm doing genetics, I would be very biased in saying that it was one of the most important biological discoveries made. But regardless of bias, it certainly was a very, very big deal. And at the time of the discovery, Watson and Crick were collaborating with a lab in London, where Maurice Wilkins and a lady called Rosalind Franklin were working. And after years of trial and error, as is standard in all walks of life and far too commonplace in a lab, Rosalind Franklin managed to capture the now famous image of the DNA double helix structure. And this was the final piece of the puzzle for Watson and Crick, and they were able to figure out what the actual structure of DNA was. This image was unfortunately taken and given to Watson and Crick without Rosalind Franklin's permission or her knowledge, and she wasn't acknowledged in the subsequent groundbreaking paper that was published about their discovery. Even though Watson admitted that the data she provided was crucial to their discovery, and for decades her contribution was just unknown. Rosalind Franklin actually left her esteemed position in King's College London as a result of the intolerable sexism she was subjected to daily as a woman in STEM in the 1950s. She was not allowed to enter the dining hall, and as a result she was excluded from any casual scientific discourse that would have occurred, and that is so important in any profession. And tragically, her untimely death was attributed to the high amounts of radiation she was exposed to trying to get this life-changing image of X-ray image of DNA structure. The potential effects of discoveries in STEM are not limited to the STEM discipline. They are incredibly far-reaching. One discovery can impact millions of people. Like the discovery of the double helix has led to a deeper understanding of so many different biological concepts, but particularly the mechanisms behind cancer, and has paved the way for the range of new treatments that are coming out year after year. We saw in the 1950s the impact Rosalind Franklin made as a woman, and it would be to the detriment of any profession to exclude 50% of the population. Thankfully, things have improved so much with respect to gender equality in recent times, but to quote Anne O'Leary from as recently as last night, progress is painfully slow. But the fact that we are having this conversation in the first place, and the fact that there are so many willing contributors here today in the audience and on the panel, is an incredibly good sign. So I'm now going to pass you over to Jess from Newstalk, who will share what I'm sure is going to be my favourite panel for the weekend. So thank you.
Very much for that. There's no better way to start off a panel about women in STEM than hearing from a woman in STEM, so thank you for that. And it's also quite interesting, you know, when you were talking about DNA and so on, you say one discovery can impact so many people, and a discovery that we are still, you know, coming to terms with is that women can do stuff in STEM, which is, you know, bonkers, I know. But we have a brilliant panel here for the next hour or so to talk through a number of issues, and we have closest to me, Gillian Keeting of the IWISH Foundation, Anne O'Leary, CEO of Vodafone Ireland, Dr. Naimh O'Sullivan, the head of genetics at UCD, and Harry McCann, CEO of Trendster Media, and also our token young person. Yeah, yous are all old. Gillian, I want to start with you if that's okay, because I've been to a number of the IWISH events, and I've seen some really incredible young girls who are so passionate about what they do, and they have a love for science, technology, engineering and maths without necessarily calling it what it is. And yet when they get to the age of filling in their CAO form, going to college or entering the workforce, they seem to peter out. Why do you think that is? How, like, what happens between, you know, the school-going age to being an adult working in STEM?
Well, I think it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting perception, because if you go to the IWISH events, you see the excitement in the girls' faces, because they really are amazed by the opportunities that are out there when we show them what the kind of groundbreaking technology today is and what it could be in 10 or 20 years' time. So you're seeing them when they're at their most engaged, when we're actually informing them correctly and in a way that really resonates with them about the opportunities that are out there. But what you actually need to do is take a step back from that and go before it and see what's been happening in their lives in terms of painting the STEM picture for them. And you know what has been happening and what we've seen, which I thought was really incredible, if you look at an OECD survey from just last year, they surveyed 20,000 primary school kids across Europe. And what they noticed was that between the ages, which I thought was really interesting, between the ages of 7 and 17, our perceptions about our career choices, the change is really, really marginal. That's incredible. And what they also showed with those 20,000 primary school kids is that their interest in different careers is gender stereotyped at that age.
So grim.
Yeah, so when you think about that at 7, in this particular survey, for example, 4 times as many boys picked engineering as a future career, and twice as many boys picked science-related career choices than girls at that age. And then when you think, if that is correct and that the change is so marginal between 7 and 17, it's not what happens after 17 that's important, it's actually what happened in the age between even as young as 5 to 17 that's really, really important. And it's, if you look at then that gender stereotyping at that young age, you need to say to yourself, well, what is we as a society, what messages are we still giving young girls? And are we still, you know, very unconsciously biased in terms of our behaviour and our choices for the future generation of young female leaders and entrepreneurs and scientists and whatever?
So does it come back to as fundamental, and you hear it every Christmas, you know, if you go into Smith's Toys, you walk down the aisle, there's the pink aisle, there's the blue aisle, and the blue has the doctor's kit, and the pink aisle has the nurse's kit.
Of course.
Is it as fundamental as that?
Absolutely, it's in every single thing that we do. So we as parents or aunts or uncles or friends or whatever need to continuously check ourselves in terms of our behaviour, because that does influence young girls and young men and young boys indeed as well. And then also we need to look at, you know, how our teachers are informed and how better we can support them as one of the, outside of parents and family, as one of the most connected people to our youth.
And I was down in Cavan with some of your people last year because you had the Code Like a Girl initiative, and we were in a classroom with, I think it was 20 girls who were transition year students, and it was a 2-day intensive introduction into computer science. They did empowerment training and all this kind of stuff. And I spoke to the girls at the end of the second day, and I said, had you ever considered a career in technology? And they all kind of giggled, saying, no, I didn't know that was a thing. And I said, did you consider one, like, would you consider one now? And they're like, well, yeah, I just built a website. And they'd never contemplated because they never knew it existed. Is that an important point of pride for you, I suppose, as a CEO, to have that as part of your mission?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about doing good business and doing good as being integral, and you can do both. You can have a very successful, profitable, thriving business and do good in society. So, you know, we have a huge focus on diversity and inclusion. In Vodafone, I think everyone knows that. We have 50% female at executive level and leadership level, and that's something we've been working on probably since I joined 11 years ago, setting up the Women's Network, ensuring policies are in place to support women, flexible working, term time, ramp on when they come back from maternity leave. Why? Because I think we make better decisions, we know that, capabilities, but also it is good business practice. I mean, if you have someone that works for you for 7 or 8 years and they arrive and they say they're leaving for whatever, look after their family, you have to go out, you have to find another person, it's lost time, it costs money with headhunters, you have to train a new person. So even from that perspective, there's a loss of productivity and it costs a lot. So keeping and encouraging the women we have to stay in work, to stay in the job, even if they want to dial down their work hours or work more flexibly and giving them the tools, is just a natural progression. But just to answer your question, which was, so we do a lot of work trying to influence parents and teachers and schools and young girls. So we have a lot of people that do that. We have Connecting Women in Technology, which was IT for Geeks. We got out to 4,000 students in different schools. Again, just to be a positive influence, just to show them what work there is and role there is in technology companies for young girls. So I would agree with Gillian. I think, you know, my mum wanted me to be a nurse. That's all she probably knew. A lot of the women girls that come in and do internships in Vodafone say, oh my God, I never knew this was a technology company and that I could add value and that I could learn and enjoy it and that I could be good at it and thrive here. So, you know, there is a lot of ignorance out there, so we really try to work ourselves and with other technology companies, getting out to schools, getting out to teachers. We've Code Like a Girl, Coder Dojo, around the country, going into some of the giga hubs that we have, you know, doing all these classes, just trying to open girls' minds and the teachers and the parents. So, you know, we just have to keep doing it. And we also know, you know, I read something recently, you know, the money that people in technology earn is much higher than other industries. And you talk about women and poverty and lone parents and all this. This is all linked. And I know people say to me, it's not all about the money, but it's not all about the money until you don't have it. And the fact is, we want to create women who are financially independent and can make choices about their life and their family. And there are certain industries that pay more than others, and technology is one of them. So even from a livelihood and a social, it is important that we do that. So there's a lot of work to do together. Government, business, society, education system.
But you just, at the beginning of your answer there, you spoke about the business case for gender equality. And let's not forget, Vodafone is a business at its core. You're there to make money and all the rest. If it makes business sense to keep your staff and to have that diversity, why aren't more businesses doing it?
So I think, the stats are there now, so the data's there. Having more women on boards, having more women at executive level companies, McKinsey, the facts are there. More diversity of thought, so you'll get better returns, whether it's revenue growth or profitability. So that is clearly there. We saw the banking crisis. It was all part of groupthink, having too much of the same. So I think more companies, certainly larger companies like us, any company on the FTSE 100, there's a light being shone in terms of board and executive level and gender. So sometimes what gets measured gets done. Unfortunately, that's what has to happen. And sometimes people can read stuff and believe it, but not actively participate. I see a lot of passiveness in things. People say, I agree with the women thing, and I know we should have more women. And you kind of say, well, what are you doing about it? And tell me your stats. Ooh, that's a bit, so we insourced our IT 2 years ago, and we were looking for 100 IT professionals in Dublin. Now, when you say that, that's just a nightmare to start. Because one, they're really hard to find, two, they're paid a lot, whatever. And then I said to HR, and it's going to have to be 50 male and 50 female. And they went, oh no, right? Because, I said, well, that's just the way it is. And so they had to work harder to go out and make sure that it was gender balanced. And we did. We got the 100, we insourced them, and 50 male, 50 female. And I met the women. And I asked them, why did you join Vodafone? And all of them said, flexible work hours, flexible work policies. I have kids, I have another life, I have a lot going on, I need to work, but I want to be empowered and trusted. I want to be given tools that I can work from home. I want to know that if I want to start the day at 11, I can. If I don't have to be in, I want to be in that environment. And where I was, that wasn't the environment that was there. So it's really, if you think about it, the other companies lost this great talent, these capabilities, and we got them. And what will happen is those women won't leave.
Yeah.
They'll stay because they've had the kids. They're the only ones that can have kids at the moment, as far as I know, which is good. And we want people to have children for our pension funds and for the next generation. So it makes really good sense for us and for society. And I believe I'll get great, superior business results and returns. And I'm doing good. And I'm doing the right thing. And I want my workflows to reflect my customer base. And women are making much more decisions in the home about broadband, about TV, about mobiles. So I want to make sure that the way we think and the way we advertise, etc., is female friendly. And it is successful, and we're one of the most successful companies in Vodafone in terms of gender. And I suppose I have led it from the top.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, it has to be led from the top. That we really are committed to it. And just by the way, people say something to me, well, I don't want to be a token woman. There's no chance of that. It just doesn't happen. The fact is, when you put women into roles, actually they're probably scrutinised more, and often they have to be better. Because you put the woman into the role and they're looking. And I have a new CFO, maybe 15 months now. Who is she? Whatever, next thing, oh, she's brilliant, Anne. Oh, amazing that, isn't it? But it's scrutinised, so there's no kind of room for that. So look, it's a complex area, but I really believe Vodafone has a great company and a superior business result because of the gender diversity. And now we've moved on to LGBT and age and race and culture, and it's a great place to work. So I'm proud of that. And also being that role model, for younger people, you can't be what you can't see. So young girls need to see Anne O'Leary is a CEO of a technology company. I can be that too. And I don't have to be too nerdy. I can wear nice dresses and be normal.
Yeah, like some of us are just never going to do that, no matter how much we'd like to. But that actually brings me on then to you, Naimh, because the whole notion of the stereotype, and if you work in science or technology, if you work in technology, you are a 20-something-year-old man wearing a hoodie in a dark room coding and trying to hack into everything in the world. If you're a scientist, you're wearing your white coat and you're a dork and you have no personality. As a woman who I was chatting to you outside, you seem like you have personality and you seem sound. You're grand, like. You know, how do you make your stamp in your field and not become the stereotype, but also, you know, convince people that you are not the token woman in science?
Yeah, and it's difficult because at many conferences and things I go to, I mean, this is such a change, but often I'm one of the few women, if not the only woman, and particularly when you go for dinner in the evening time, you're the only woman at the table. You do it by doing your job well and by making someone forget that you're a woman and they're just chatting to you. Sometimes it can be helpful actually, because you're sitting at a big table of often men who are 20 years older than you. You know, you can engage and talk with these people, change their mind, and as the conversation progresses, you know, if you're saying intelligent things and you're doing your job well, then people forget about those things. So you do it by doing the job that you're supposed to do. Getting in the door in the first place can be what's hard. Take the opportunity once you get in there. So in terms of getting women in and you know, allowing them to come to the table and progress things, that's something that we're having to work, and so Anne mentioned it in terms of business, it's definitely something that we're having to work at in higher education. Not so much getting women into study, particularly in biology in the field I'm in. So actually there's a majority, so it's about 60% women who undertake biology degrees, masters and PhDs, so we have a majority of women in those fields. We tend to lose them, we don't retain them well. And by the time you get up to senior professorial level within UCD, we've like 20%.
Why is that?
So we lose them for a number of reasons. Some of them, these are women's choices, they've chosen to go to perhaps more flexible working careers, but in other instances, women want to be promoted but aren't getting promoted. Within universities, in terms of getting promotion, your research output is a huge factor in those things, and women have not done as well in attracting research financing. So if you look at Science Foundation Ireland, which is the main provider of funds nationally for STEM, since their inception, they have awarded 9 times more money to male researchers than they have to females. And actually that gap has gotten worse since 2013. So, you know, if you're not getting the money and if you're not getting the finance to be able to do the good projects, you're not getting promoted. And if you don't get promoted, you're not at the higher level.
So how, if we are trying to get to the bottom of this, where along the chain is the problem? Is it that there is the bias because it's a female name on the paper? Is it that the women are putting themselves forward? Like, where is the issue?
It's complex. There's both of those things you've just mentioned are contributing factors.
Okay.
There's definitely some unconscious bias. We know this because another funding body, so the Irish Research Council, which provides most of the money for postgraduate PhD awards, it was pointed out to them in 2013 that about 1/3 of their awards were going to women, so they were looking at ways of being able to address this. So they gender blinded their applications, and so, you know, I've written some of these. You talk about the candidate and the applicant and you write about them, and in 3 years the stats are now that for 2017 I think it was 57% of the awards went to women, and that was the only change they have enacted there is gender blinding the awards. So sometimes you can put a fix on it like that. For other ones, it's not so simple, and it's particularly at more senior levels. If women are taking a year or 2 out for childcare or family care reasons, science can be very unforgiving to that. If you're not producing papers, if you're not doing cutting edge research, then you're gone. You're not at the conferences, you're not at the meetings, you're not contributing. And so that's something that science probably has to address itself and look at ways of saying, well, how can we make considerations for that and support women when they come back in from, or parents who are taking parental leave and support them on those. Some universities are doing taking steps to address that. So the Athena Swan Award is an award for higher education and universities, and it's really a recognition of universities that are trying to make allowances for diversity and particularly for promotion of women, and that's something that, you know, UCD and most of the main universities in Ireland are looking to apply for. And so you have to show you have an action plan and things that you're going to try, and not just enact things but actually check, is that working, and if it's not working, do something else. So it's a work in progress. It's really only been in the last 3-4 years that the kind of statistics and things that Anne mentioned we're starting to be taken for higher education. So we're really only at the start of saying, okay, here's where we're at, we need to get better. So the stats will hopefully help that.
It's interesting, and Harry, this is where I want to bring you in, because you are 10 years younger than I am, and I think that I've grown up with things being kind of okay, that there's always room for improvement. But as someone who is, like, you're 20, as someone who's 20, how do you find growing up in this era? Have you been always like aware of girls need to be treated the same as boys and women need to be treated the same as men? Is that something that's been instilled in you, or do you think that there's still room for improvement throughout education, sports clubs, and so on?
Yeah, I suppose I think I've grown up in a great home where, you know, my parents have always said, you know, you treat everybody equally, and it doesn't really matter who they are, where they're from, or what their name is, or whatever it may be, and just treat them equally. And I was saying there earlier that, you know, I get called a snowflake a lot, and snowflake's quite a common term. And
It does my head in.
yeah, it does, and I get, every time I say something and somebody doesn't agree with me, you go, you're a big snowflake, and I was like, right, okay, really good response. But what snowflake actually means is that, you know, we care about what's happening in the world, we're conscious, we care about other people, you know, we want to do good things, and I'm not embarrassed to be a snowflake for that reason, but I think the generation that I'm in at the moment, and the people below me growing up who are a little bit younger than me, are a little less, I don't know what the word is, we don't care. Like, we don't care about who you are, what you look like, what you wear. And I think I see it a lot, and one of my original projects was the Digital Youth Council. And when we done the Digital Youth Council, it was to bring young people in STEM together. And every single year, we had about 50-50, if not about 55-45 gender kind of break. There was no quota. All the young people on the group, applications would come in every year, they vote, and then they come in. And it's funny because I used to get tweets from people, so we put up a picture of the meeting, and there'd be like 10 of us, and there'd be 8 guys and 2 girls, and they go, where are all the girls? And I go, well, actually, funny enough, all the girls in the group are a lot more successful than the guys, and they're busier than the guys. So like, one time there was like, where are all the girls? And I was like, 3 of them were in New York receiving an award. I was like, believe it or not, I was like, they actually have better things to be doing. I was like, I live with 3 girls, I'm in UCC, and I live with 3 girls, and I'm on an entrepreneurship and innovation scholarship, and I live with other entrepreneurs, and I was like, you know, I'm surrounded by girls and women who are far, far, far more successful than me, and they were fantastic role models, and people are like, you know, I'm the only guy who's an entrepreneurship and innovation scholarship in UCC at the moment. And I think my generation is really progressing this, and I think, you know, in 10 years' time, when it comes to it, I was like, there was, Anne mentioned earlier, was like, there's more CEOs named John than there is women. I was like, that's ridiculous, that's just stupid, I don't understand it. And like, I think, as time goes on, we'll see it more and more, and I said, the Digital Council was a 50-50 gender balance, but I've often been on boards, I've been on panels where, you know, there's one woman or there's no women. I was on an advisory board recently where there wasn't a single woman in the room for a new product coming out, and they were like, we're trying to deliver this product to everybody, and I was like, well, all men here. It's like, there's not a single woman in here that's like, I'm the token young person, yeah, great. I was like, you know, you got that down to the ground, but I was like, you've no women here. And I'm glad to say I'm no longer on the advisory panel for it. But I was like, how does it work? I was like, I just think, as I said, I've seen so many examples where I say, every time I'm with people my own age, it's never an issue. It's when you bring, what I like to call, and please don't take insult, the old farts into the room. It's that everything seems to become, let's bring more men in, let's take less women. I was like, we're so less accepting, and it's scary, it's really scary. And I was like, sometimes, you know, the snowflakes may just be right.
It's interesting though, because your generation, we're seeing it now, and I think Anne and I have spoken about this before, in that younger people want to work for a company that has a purpose. We're seeing this trend an awful lot. You know, that's why we're seeing the rise of robots. It's not because the robots want to take over, it's because young people don't want to do menial tasks that can be easily replaced or have robots do it. And in terms of someone who leads a business, I know that you guys have a mission statement that you try to live by, and how important is that to make sure people feel fulfilled when they come to work?
Well, for me, it's the most important thing. So, you know, why do I get up every morning and go to Vodafone? We talk about building a better future. We talk about connecting for good. And it's really the only thing that motivates me. And it's the only thing I talk to my people about. Because what I'm hoping is the 2,000 people that work for Vodafone, when they get up in the morning, you know, they're happy about going to work, they're proud of what they're doing, and they'll make good decisions and the right decisions, and especially when we talk about ethics and transparency and the world now we live in, and there's so many decisions we made. And we have 3 pillars. One is we call the gigabit society or the digital society, and that's about 4G, 5G, it's about fibre to the home, it's about getting connectivity to everybody, leaving nobody behind, country towns, wherever you live, wherever you want to work, and that's really important to us. So when we look at investment decisions on CapEx, we put it there. If we have 10 million to spend, do we spend it on 4G and 5G and fibre to the home or something else? So it helps our investment decisions because we know we're doing good, we know it'll make a decision, we know connecting and people being able to work remotely and work smartly and the flexible working, it all supports that. The other is sustainability, so everything about power and generation and the climate and everything we do. We got rid of all plastic, 7,000 cups a week we were using in Vodafone. And one day I came in, I said, I don't want to see a plastic cup anywhere. Here, I chair Gold, the charity, and I had been in Ethiopia the week before at refugee camps, and it was life-changing for me. And the big thing I saw was the amount of rubbish everywhere, the amount of plastic, because there was no one to pick it up or clean it up. And I came back, and the response from the employee was, well done, thank you, recycling and our power, etc. So, there's all these things that we can do, as I say, but deliver the superior business results. I'm not, whether it's a snowflake or whatever, they think, I know I need to build, grow revenue and profitability and customer satisfaction scores and all that. I get that. But I believe by living and working under those pillars that we will achieve those results. And I've proved it in Vodafone over the past 5 years. Because just people do the right thing. They hire the right people, they support people, people stay longer, they think about the customer and what you need. Well, we try, and we try to do right by you, charge fair pricing and give good service, and that people will pay for. They reward you because they stay with you longer. So it's really not that complicated, but it's amazing how businesses don't do it.
They don't cop it, yeah.
And that, diversity and inclusion is just a key part of that, whatever that is, gender and LGBT and capabilities. And I see it with the young people coming in and the digitals, it's how they dress, how they work, how they speak, the environment they want to be in. And also people are working much more in teams now, cross-functional teams. And you have to be someone that can communicate and collaborate and be open to new ideas. That's inclusion. You think differently, the age, the experience. So it's core to me and it's core to Vodafone, and it's core, like the research when we do our employee engagement surveys, 90% will say, I get our strategy, I get our purpose, I get we do good. I have round tables with people and they introduce themselves, say how long they're there, and I say, why do you work for Vodafone? Or what are you proud of? And you hear things like, I'm working in a great team, or I love the charitable aspect, or I love going out to the schools, or the Coder Jojo, I love that we build networks and build a better future for Ireland. These are the kind of things, and I'm like, wow, it's so motivating.
Yeah.
And just to jump in on that point there, and I think there's a misconception now amongst industry and amongst the Johns that, when graduates come out of college and they're looking for jobs, we take into consideration the fact that, Vodafone is a 50-50 split, or that, they're environmentally friendly, or that they're conscious about that and they want equality and inclusion. And that's something I personally look for when I'm looking at brands or when I'm going to look for a job, is that I want to work with people who are making the right impact. I have a sister, I have a mum, I have cousins, I have aunties, I want to know that, a business considers them, takes care of them, cares about them. And I think a lot of people are under the illusion that, when you go out, you're going to buy the cheapest or the most expensive, or that you're going to work for the company who pays you the most. That's not true. It's the company that cares the most. It's the company that cares about other people and inclusive. It doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter who you love, it doesn't matter what you do. It's about how good you are as an individual. And I think it's really important. I don't think there should be any idea, and any business should take for granted the fact that, caring will work for you in the long term. It's not just how much you're willing to pay.
It's definitely a shift that we've seen. Gillian, I wanted to talk to you briefly just about how STEM is now becoming STEAM. So we're seeing science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. There's space for different types of brain in this industry. It's not, again, going back to the point that we made earlier on, it's not the nerdy stereotype anymore. There's space for philosophers and, you know, poets and all the rest in this space. Do you think that we need to get that message out further to young girls, people who may have discounted themselves from technology before?
Absolutely. Before I answer that, if I could just make one point to the conversation that we just had, which I think is really important. We surveyed last year 4,000 young girls between the ages of 14 and 17. This year, in February this year, we surveyed 6,000 girls who attended our events between the ages of 14 and 17. And the year before we did exactly the same. And what comes out clear as daylight every single time is as much as 85% of the girls want a career where they can improve people's lives. And the difference between our thinking now and maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago is that we saw that then pigeonholing women into what we saw as the traditional caring roles. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, what we didn't show them is how STEM improves and transforms people's lives and shapes a better world. So what we do at IWISH now is we ask everyone who speaks at IWISH or exhibits at IWISH is to talk to that message and how STEM and their industry or higher education in terms of research actually does transform the world we live in. And I think that's a really important message. And you see the dividends in Vodafone, and you were saying it's exactly the same amongst your cohort, which is really interesting. But in terms of the arts, what I spoke to the girls about this year was that, look, they're going to dictate what the jobs of the future are going to be. I mean, we've all heard the statistics that 85% of the jobs that will be out there in 2030 haven't even been invented yet, and that's just amazing. And so what I say to the girls was, actually, you're going to be the people who hopefully will start with a clean slate and design those jobs of the future. And then, you know, the automatic question, well, that's great, but if that's the case, give me some direction in terms of what I should study or how do I train for this? And the answer to that is you absolutely do not. But what you do is you focus on your creativity. You focus on disciplining your mind to focus on what's important to you and what's important in terms of the world around you. You focus on building relationships and connections so that you can work really well as part of a team. You focus on being curious and inquisitive and asking all the time, why is this the way it is and could it be better? And all of that goes to building your creativity. And in actual fact, as we face into a world which is going to be more and more dominated by technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, we need people who have that creative mindset and who can actually, you know, say, well, is this the only way to do it? And is there a better way? And what does that better way look like? So building that creativity is hugely important in terms of the future of work. And what I wish this year was really interesting. We were hugely honoured to have the guys from Cartoon Saloon at the event in the RDS. And it was so interesting to watch these two young girls at the Cartoon Saloon stage, and they were showing how, you know, they build an animation from scratch, from the coding to it, to understanding the story, to showing all of that and how it actually puts forward a whole new career choice for girls that they never knew was out there. And sometimes, you know, that creative side, again, back to the caring piece and what people used to talk about as soft skills, we need to drop that. We need to talk about them as the essential skills of the future. So the arts and creativity is absolutely key.
In terms of the teaching of the sciences, you know, again, when I went to Gael School Cláistíoscán and I loved every second of it, but the teaching of science there up until Leaving Cert cycle was read off a text and then word vomited back onto a page, and that was your science education. And then when I went to my 5th year, I had an amazing biology teacher who just captivated every ounce of my attention, and I loved it. And it made me realise just how important the teacher was, because she was very animated. She did experiments where possible to try and illustrate what exactly we were doing and why. Do you think that we need to reimagine how science is taught to ensure that you are engaging the children who aren't book nerds and, you know, very academic by nature?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to say as well, nerds. I'm a nerd. Nerd
so
just
am I.
means you're passionate about something, and I'm fine with it.
I wear it with pride. Don't worry, don't worry.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think we can all think back and think of the teachers who inspired us, and that can be at any level, primary, secondary, tertiary. And it comes to a key point in why I was always interested in science, and I think most of the people who I'd see coming through, and people like Isla and things like that we really encourage, an education in STEM or encouraging people towards STEM, it's about curiosity. And it's how things work around you, and that can be in a biological, a chemical, an engineering, whatever point of view. But fundamentally, you find things interesting and you want to go out and learn more about it. And so to have any educator who can encourage young people in that direction is vitally important. It's difficult, and you get a huge range of abilities of people who are able to do that. But because the benefits are so obvious, and we've heard a lot about the benefits to business, but I'd argue these are benefits to society. We get women in and trained, and diverse range of people trained in STEM, and their training is going to be learning about the world around them. How does it work? What do we not know? And how do we go and problem solve and work out things like that? You then have women and people who go, right, well actually there's this problem over here that no one's looked at before, perhaps because it's a woman problem or something, or just to take a different perspective on things. And that can be in business, that can be in higher education, but that can be much further afield, and it can be looking at things like homelessness or political or media sphere, and to have that curiosity and problem solving ability to be able to bring those things to the table. Huge numbers of science graduates don't particularly stay in research or in science, but they go and they use their skills in other aspects. And they're taking that training with them. So having passionate people who can encourage a whole range of people in to learn and get this training and then go on and do wonderful things with it, that's what's really important. We need different voices and different ways of thinking in there.
We're going to open the, you can give a round of applause, Sarah Carey, mad for the applause. We are going to open the floor to questions in just 1 minute time. But before we do that, I just want to ask what's possibly a stupid question, but from what we've heard over the last little while, it makes so much sense, so why isn't it happening, and how do we make it happen?
Well, I suppose that it's kind of like how long is a piece of string. There are so many answers to that question. I think it was interesting, Anne was talking very clearly about the diversity dividend earlier and the long-term benefits, but unfortunately there is also a short-term cost in terms of financial and human resources in putting the kind of structures that Vodafone have in place. And that requires a real cultural change in order to ensure that companies are committed enough to do that. So I think that's part of the business issue. But back to my original response to you, the reality is that whether we like it or not, we are still gender stereotyping roles and career choices. And we do that unconsciously in our behaviour from a very early age. And we need to address that, and that is a real cultural shift, and that is not going to happen overnight. So there are positive changes, and we can't lose sight of that, but we have to continuously work to make a difference. So while you see really strong numbers of women in biology, we are still looking at like down to 14% in terms of physics, and 17 to 20% in engineering for women. So, we do need to start talking to young girls differently. And we need, it's like everything else, we need to give them information. There is nothing wrong with girls. There is no reason to change them whatsoever. But society needs to give them information. And when you think about it, from the age of 5, we ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? But we give them zero information to help them answer that question. Mm-hmm. So they will default then to what they know. So chances are you still have young kids, and the people around them are carers, they're nurses, they're teachers, all very admirable roles, but they don't yet know that many data analysts or scientists or genetics. So we need to start giving them that information at a really young age, and that's what we try to do at IWISH, but by the time we meet them, they're 15.
Yeah.
So like this year, we took videos of everybody who spoke at the conference, and we're now rolling that out to primary schools with the help of Stryker, who agreed to help us with that project. So that's fantastic, because we're now getting that, I can't be what I can't see piece, and we're moving the 70 odd people who spoke at the IWISH conference, and we're videoing them and putting them out there. So even small little pieces like that help change the conversation, but you know, it is a cultural shift,
Yeah.
so we do need to continuously commit to it.
Okay, we're going to open the floor to questions. Yeah, Kira? We have a mic. Yeah, we have a mic on the way. I'll just fill time. Just say the alphabet. I know all 26 letters. A. So Kira, there. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kira from BBC News. I have 2 points to make, and it's open to everybody. The news of the first all-female spacewalk, and then they couldn't do it because the spacesuits, they didn't have the right sizes. I mean, how it got to that point, and then it was a disaster at the end. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. It might be a good example. But also, my sister works in primary education, and she says that there's a lot of issues in primary education where the focus is on the 3 R's. Religion takes up an awful lot of time, so it's very hard to teach STEM in primary school education. Now, she's lucky because she's in a private school, and it's all about STEM there, and lucky them that the pupils can do that. So, I don't know, like, she's working on a master's now, she's researching all this, but we're behind the UK, we're behind the US. I think secondary schools apparently aren't so bad here in Ireland, but in primary education it's quite bad. And again, so what can you do? Because I know it costs money, so what are your thoughts on both of those topics?
Let me just comment on the NASA thing. I'm going to blame it John for that again, but that's ridiculous, and I think it's embarrassing when you look at NASA and what NASA claims to do and what the United States claim to do. It's like you can't make a suit a little smaller, a little bigger, a little wider, and it's funny, and it's something I seen on the television the other day was, I don't know if anyone's seen Hell Week on RTE with the Special Forces training, and there was 2 women in the group, and I was looking on Twitter at all the comments of people going, it's a bit unfair that the women have to carry the same heavy bags and do the same distance and do the same thing, and it was like, what's the point? Why is anybody any different? I was like, everyone's the same, and the 2 women weren't complaining about it. I was like, it was just people on Twitter being like, they should have a smaller bag, or they shouldn't have to run 1.5 kilometres, it should be only 1 kilometre. It's like, it's these stupid, silly things, and it's the same thing with NASA. It's like, why did nobody think of that? Why did nobody go, yeah, let's just make the suit a tiny bit smaller or a tiny bit bigger? And I was like, it comes back to this stupid mindset and the people set in their ways about, this is how it is, this is how it always is, and we're not really going to change. It's like, no, it's not how it is. It shouldn't be that way, and it has to change. And it's like, if we're going to move forward at all, and I think it's looking at people in there and going, do you not have mothers, do you not have sisters, do you not have aunties, do you not have people who you look to, or women and go, who deserve equal respect? And it's disrespectful, and it is, and I think that's just being, not ashamed, but embarrassed by something so silly in 2019. It's ridiculous.
I think with the NASA thing, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Actually, they had funding cuts in the 80s and 90s. They had plans to roll out different sizes suits, and then because of funding cuts, they went, well, we've one small, and we go on. It shouldn't be still the case 30, 40 years later, but it is. The other thing to say about that is NASA were highlighted in this regard, but actually the stories that came out after that, and certainly, I'll see it, there's, if we're going to get liquid nitrogen, the gloves are these big massive things that are falling off us because that's the gloves that were designed, and therefore that's what you go and get. If you try and get smaller forceps for doing little dissections or extra small gloves and things, which more women tend to need than men, these things cost more money. They charge more because they say, well, we produce more of the others. So this is across the board. NASA got called out internationally in a very embarrassing way, but these are things that are for historical reasons in some cases, but we should say, listen, this is part of the problem that we're saying that we don't have women and enough women staying in these industries. It comes to the short-term investment to right the problem, but then you don't have those kind of headlines again. So I think the short-term investment will be worth that.
Yeah, I think the short-term investment is an interesting thing, and I see it in my business every day. People say, but that will cost money short-term. And I go, but that doesn't matter. Long-term, it's the right thing to do. So, they had funding cuts. We all have cuts, right? But, if they're going to send the women into bloody space, they need the spaceships. You know what I mean? It's kind of... But this is what happens sometimes in meetings. You'll be at a meeting and you're like, how is this going this way? I know it cut... So, the budget has been cut, so we cut something else. You put it in the suit, So it's funny the way, whether it's groupthink or we've always done it this way, how you like as I said, when we look at our capital investment, we always prioritise the network first. there could be IT projects, there's loads of other stuff that could be done, but what's core to us? Connecting for good, that people need to connect, that's why they're with us, that's why they'll stay with us. So we'll always, so I just think in this is where the diversity of voices and thinking around tables, the pragmatic voice that goes, yes, putting in the policy for a 4-day, you know, we're paying 5 days a week, they're coming back after maternity, you know, we got it. You're going to pay them 5 days and they're only going to do 4 days. Oh, you know, and I'm like, well, they probably do 5 days work and 4 days anyway, because around here on a Friday everyone seems to be scratching. Do you know? So you're like going, so, but it's amazing how these things, you know, but in the long term, they're coming back from maternity leave, they're feeling less confident, they've been out of work, you know, they're worried about getting back, they're getting used to, you know, let them ramp up. They'll stay longer. We don't have, you know, they do great work in the 4 days, they really appreciate it and they'll be much more loyal. But those voices, that's the diversity, the gender diversity and the diversity of thought and those pragmatic, that the group think has been there, whether it's in NASA or whatever, in business, it's often those practical, simple things that, you know, that you have in the room that goes, but just because we've always done it, and maybe it's going to hurt in the short term, but if you look at it, and I have so many examples in business of that looks like it costs, you're leaving money on the table, someone would tell me. Like, what kind of things to say, you know, you could charge more, but when you look at it, well, people won't leave you, or they'll be more loyal, or they'll recommend you to a friend.
Yeah.
So longer term, it's better. So I think it actually, that NASA thing, it was a lack of diversity of thought, of people and the way they worked, and somebody not championing the way the world was changing and what the big project they were going to do. We're going to send women to space, well, we better start having the gloves and the stuff there, or, you know, I'm sure they had to do it for surgeons in the hospitals when the women were doing the heart surgery or whatever. So, you know, that is only an example of a huge problem in NASA. I'd say when you look into it, there's a load of other stuff, and that's what often comes out in journalism and these stories. Something comes out and suddenly it's systemic.
Just on the education point, if we can just kick on, so then what do you make of that question?
So that doesn't surprise me at all. I suppose my focus through IWISH would be more on the secondary school, but I suspect it's probably no different at primary, and from what you were saying, perhaps a little bit worse. So what we noticed was that teachers used to come along to IWISH and then, you know, not engage. And yet when we surveyed them, 75% of them year on year said they needed to know more about STEM. So we then set up a Teach It Zone, and it's really interesting. Last year we had 40 teachers attend IWISH. This year we had 200. And that was very much down to the success of the Teach It Zone. And what we did at the Teach It Zone is we used it as an opportunity to get industry to speak to teachers so that they could tell them about what the future opportunities are and the work that they're doing in STEM, and help them understand better those opportunities. But it's interesting that a voluntary organisation like IWISH has to take up that role to inform teachers better about the opportunities in STEM. And so in order to assist teachers, I do think we need to look at ways to develop STEM training into the CPD for teachers, to put in place incentives to help teachers bring children, whether teenagers or young kids, to these extracurricular type events which do change their minds, both the students and the teachers. And we also ran kind of unconscious bias training for teachers, and they were amazed at what they were actually doing subconsciously in terms of perhaps limiting young girls' opportunities. And you know, teachers have incredibly difficult roles. They are with very limited resources. We're asking a huge amount of them. So the more we can assist them, and the more we can try and encourage government policy to change, to assist them and inform them better, you know, that will also be part of the piece that transforms take-up of STEM for young women.
And Naimh, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, so just another thing that maybe came up a little bit peripherally from your point is that we've noticed within higher education that we're getting much more students from private or semi-private secondary schools coming into the STEM subjects, and so there's government policy about this now, and that we need to have proportional So I think it's we're aiming to get to 30% student intake from DESH schools, so these would be lower socioeconomic schools. And so that's not just a case of, well, we put a cap out there and we, let's hope the students come. We are having to be proactive about this, because this is a quota that's been set on us. But actually it helps, because it's getting to the terms of diversity. It's not just male-female diversity, but it's societal diversity. So we would do quite a lot of work in UCD that we have like science camps. So during the summer we get students in from DESH schools. We have special open days. We have engaged seminars where we get like PhD students to describe their work to students. And we're trying to expand that out. We're very much focused at the secondary school level, I guess, because of the educational sphere I work in. That's where we get our intake from. But absolutely take the point that other people have made, and yourself are here saying that actually at primary level it's already an issue. So that's something that nationally I think needs to be looked at, and looked at a curricular level.
Absolutely. So we've time for one more question. Yes, Sarah?
So first of all, a quick story. I made my two sons do home economics in secondary school. The people who slagged them off about it were the girls in the class. We said, why are you doing this? This is a girls' subject. So it just goes to Gillian's point that those rigid stereotypes are there, and thanks girls, you're the ones actually reinforcing it. Yeah. Second one is I'm doing a lot of work at the moment in an engineering capacity. And one of my colleagues was complaining, her two kids were sick, they couldn't go to creche, and she rang in and there was a fuss about, was this a day's leave, was it sick leave, what it is, and she was bitching about the company. And I said, yeah, that's grand, but your husband wasn't the guy ringing in because the kids were sick. Why didn't he call? And then she went all red and her eyes drifted away, and I was got the cause of a row that night. The point being, maybe to Anne, it's all very well offering women flexible working hours so they can parent. How many men are coming to you? I need flexible hours so I can be a parent. And in HR, they might be great about offering on-ramps to women who maybe took a couple of years out. But if they got a CV in from a dad who said, I've been at home for 2 years, would they give him a crack at it, or would they say, well, clearly you've just been unemployed? So it's not a gender, it's a parenthood thing. And when are men going to do more parenting? And that's when we get a better track at it.
Yeah, so look, I completely agree with, the males, caregivers, etc. So the policies are for both men and women in Vodafone. And all the men say to me, they're brilliant, thank you. So there's no meetings before 9 o'clock, there's no meetings after 5 o'clock, that's for everyone. The flexible working is available to both men and women, and we encourage both of them to take them and actively do it. Term time, taking the month of August off, Christmas off, Easter off, it's the same 9-day fortnight available to everyone, and men do take them up. And we hear more, now whether they've always been doing it or they haven't or it's changed, men now talk about, I drop the kids to school, or I do the evenings, or I'm going to take 4 weeks off in the August, because it's become acceptable, so they're not going to be slagged maybe, like the home economics thing. So, to be fair as well to men, maybe they couldn't feel they could ring in and say that it wasn't an environment where they could say to their boss, well, I have to do the dropping off in the morning or whatever. So what I would say is all the policies, obviously the maternity, we have paternity, and they don't have the 4 days, but all the flexible, smart working, all the tools, it's open to both. And it kind of we expect our male leaders to role model these behaviours as well. And I've had women working for me that haven't, that were having early morning meetings and people were complaining, or late in the evening, but the feedback we get is the policies work for both. The objective is to be the best place to work for women by 2025. That's what we do. But all the men benefit and everyone benefits from it. And I can absolutely say that. And we have a lot of talks and, we see more sharing now. Both have to work, both have to share. The women are having more higher power jobs. A lot of the women that are working with me, they're men, the men do as much. I'm not saying it's always. And at some stage, couples decide to make a choice. I just want to make sure that the women don't make the wrong choice and they don't give up completely, even if they, scale down to 5 mornings a week or 3 days a week or whatever. But no, it's open to both The men are delighted. We talk about it, I encourage them. They talk about their kids and their role model. So I think it's very successful, and I hear it is, and I don't see a difference, you know.
Yeah, just to add though, and in fairness, I said to Anne before, and it wasn't just kind of blowing smoke, you walk in the door of Vodafone and there is a different atmosphere in that building, and I could name other companies that you experience similar, so you know the diversity is there. But unfortunately, it is the exception, and I can see lots of men and women facing into that conversation. And if you look at the research that's coming from the European Commission now in terms of future legislation, it is very much focusing on the part-time flexible working, because women say they value more than anything else, and it is women, unfortunately, until that conversation changes, they value more than anything else being able to pick up the phone last minute and say, I won't be in today, because you can't plan that your child is going to be sick or your mother is going to be ill 4 days in advance to give that kind of notice. And they're the kind of key initiatives that you're doing in Vodafone, and that we so need to see so much more of. In my industry, which is law, you absolutely need to see it. I'm sure in the same for most people in this room. We need to hear more stories like Vodafone, and I say to Anne, another one that stands out for me is VMware in Cork. We need to hear more like that to influence and push other industries. And while initiatives like the 30% Club are fantastic, what I think we really need to hear is the specifics, like things like no meetings before 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that just makes sense the minute you say it, but we're not hearing those specifics enough, maybe?
Yeah, no, there's no denying that there's a lot of work to be done, but the good thing is that there is a place that we can go. Like, the good thing about being where we are is that we've got somewhere to strive to be. Finally, Anne, I suppose, just to wrap up, if there are any people in here who are running a business or running a team and so on, what would be your final take-home thought for them in terms of bringing that balance into the workplace, regardless of whether it's STEM or, you know, education or whatever it may be?
You know, I mean, we talk to our leaders about leadership. You know, again, people want to work for people that are authentic, and they want to know what your values are and who you are. I think it's about trust, you know, so on both sides, we need to go that the majority of people want to do a good day's work. They want to do their best, and they want to feel happy about their work and what they do. So that trusting and empowering your team is important, and to make sure that we all don't hire people in our own likeness. So, you know, it's very easy to say, oh, I play golf, they play golf, isn't that great? Boring, but anyway, no. You know, but, you know, so the introvert and the extrovert, as well as the gender, the young and the old, different culture, different backgrounds. So I think the more we surround ourselves with difference, the more we'll be challenged, the more curiosity you'll get, the more innovation you get, the more you'll be prepared for this future, which is daunting. It's exciting, we say in Vodafone, but it's also daunting. And you know, the challenges of business, the competitive intensity, technology and the role of technology. So, you know, really, but at the end of the day, I keep saying to people, people is what makes it all work. Without the people, I really believe, you know, our emotions and how we think and how we feel and how we act is still going to be key. Technology will not take over for that. There's always a role for us and people. So, you know, my view is just to be open and to be trusting and to have the conversations, I say to people as well. Be open if there are issues. People come to me with issues and I say, well, did you say it to them? Oh, no. And I said, often people don't know, you know, and often when you ask people how they are, what's going on, there's something else going on. And this is maybe the kindness and the caring in the world we're living in. And just being caring and being kind and asking the question and supporting people, you'll get loyalty and you'll get them to go the extra mile. And I think you'll have better business results on the back of it. The people with the best people and the more curious people and the committed people and the engaged people are the businesses that will be successful, I believe.
Alright, my thanks to our panel, Anne O'Leary, CEO of Vodafone Ireland, Dr. Naimh O'Sullivan, Head of Genetics at UCD, Gillian Keeting of the IWISH Foundation, and Harry McCann, CEO of Trendster Media. And thank you all for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.